Danny Cole had spent 12 years of his life hauling cargo across the outer colonies. He had flown through dust storms on Mars, delivered medicine to dying stations near Jupiter, and carried food supplies to miners who worked in places so dark they forgot what sunlight looked like. For all those years, he saved every credit he earned. He lived in small rooms. He ate cheap food. He wore the same boots until they fell apart. And he dreamed of something bigger. When the Galactic Salvage Authority announced an auction for old ships, Danny knew this was his moment. He had enough money saved to buy something real. Not another broken shuttle held together with tape and prayers. A real ship. Something with power. Something with history. The auction house floated in orbit around Nexus Station, the largest trading hub in the sector. Danny took a transport shuttle up from the surface and walked into a room filled with beings from across the galaxy. Tall warriors stood in groups, their scaled skin reflecting the overhead lights. Merchants whispered to each other, their crystalline faces showing no emotion. Small groups of clicked and buzzed, their insect-like bodies moving in quick, nervous patterns. Danny counted at least 15 different species in the room. He was the only human. That was normal now. Humans had become rare in places like this. After the war ended 30 years ago, most of humanity had retreated to their home systems. The peace treaty had been harsh. The human military fleet had been broken apart. Their warships had been decommissioned and sold for scrap. The galaxy had decided that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with real power, so they had taken that power away. Danny found a seat near the back of the room and waited. The auctioneer was with 4 arms and a voice that carried across the entire hall. Ship after ship appeared on the big screen at the front of the room. Transport vessels, mining ships, passenger cruisers. The aliens bid quickly and confidently, their paddles rising and falling as prices climbed higher and higher. Then Lot 47 appeared on the screen. The room went quiet. Danny leaned forward in his seat. The ship on the screen was old, but it was beautiful in a way that made his heart beat faster. It was a Dominion-class cruiser, built during the war years when humans still had a fleet that made other species nervous. The hull was dark gray, from battles fought decades ago. The name painted on the side read Vagrant Dawn. The auctioneer cleared his throat. He seemed uncomfortable. Former human military vessel, he announced. Decommissioned after the Treaty of Orion. Currently stored in Salvage Yard 7. Starting bid is 5,000 credits. No one moved. Danny looked around the room. The warriors had turned away from the screen. The merchants were studying their data pads, pretending to be busy. The had stopped clicking entirely. It was as if everyone in the room had decided at the same moment to pretend the ship did not exist. Danny had heard stories about this. Aliens did not like human ships. They called them cursed. They said human engineers built vessels that were too aggressive, too stubborn, too willing to fight when any sensible ship would run away. During the war, human cruisers had destroyed fleets 3 times their size. They had survived damage that should have torn them apart. They had kept fighting long after their crews were dead, their automated systems refusing to accept defeat. The galaxy had learned to fear human ships, and fear had turned into something like superstition. 5,000 credits, the auctioneer repeated. Do I have any bids? Silence. Danny raised his paddle. Every head in the room turned to look at him. He felt hundreds of alien eyes studying him with a mixture of confusion and pity. The human was buying a human ship. Of course he was. Humans never learned. 5,000 credits to the human in the back, the auctioneer said. Do I have 5,500? Nothing. Going once, going twice, sold to the human for 5,000 credits. Danny stood up and walked to the front of the room to complete the paperwork. The auctioneer handed him a data pad and watched him sign with something that might have been concern. You understand, the auctioneer said quietly. This vessel has been sitting in storage for 30 years. The power systems may be dead. The navigation computer uses software that nobody supports anymore. We cannot guarantee anything about its condition." "I understand," Danny said. "And you still want it." "I still want it." The auctioneer shook his head slowly, but said nothing more. Danny took a shuttle to Salvage Yard 7 that same day. The yard was a graveyard of old ships, their hulls floating in slow orbits around a dead moon. Most of them were alien vessels, worn out from years of service and stripped of anything valuable. But near the edge of the yard, separated from everything else, sat the Vagrant Dawn. She was bigger than Danny remembered from the screen, 300 meters long, with weapons ports that had been welded shut and engine pods that were dark and cold. Dust and microdebris had collected on her hull, giving her a gray, ghost-like appearance. She looked dead. But when Danny pressed his hand against the outer airlock, he felt something, a vibration, so faint that he might have imagined it, like a heartbeat buried deep inside the ship, waiting. He cycled the airlock and stepped inside. The interior was dark. Emergency lights flickered on as he walked, casting red shadows across walls covered in old warning signs and faded crew photos. The air was stale but breathable. The floor plates were solid under his feet. Danny walked through the corridors until he reached the bridge. The captain's chair sat empty in the center of the room, facing a that showed nothing but static. He stood there for a long moment, looking at the dead consoles and the silent displays. Then he sat down in the chair. It fit him perfectly. "I know you are still in there," Danny said to the empty room. "I know they tried to shut you down and lock you away, but I am here now, and I am going to wake you up." The ship did not answer, but somewhere deep in her hull, a system that had been sleeping for 30 years registered a new presence, a human presence, and for the first time in decades, the Vagrant Dawn began to hope. Danny pulled out his communicator and called his oldest friend. Marsh answered on the second ring. "Danny, where are you? You missed dinner." "I need your help. I just bought a ship." There was a long pause. "What kind of ship?" "A Dominion-class cruiser, human military. Her name is Vagrant Dawn." Another pause, longer this time. "Danny, those ships are death traps. Nobody has flown one in 30 years. "I know, that is why I need you. You are the best mechanic I know. Help me bring her back." Sighed, but Danny could hear the curiosity in her voice. She had always loved a challenge. "Send me the coordinates. I will be there in the morning." Danny ended the call and leaned back in the captain's chair. Outside, the stars drifted past in the darkness. Somewhere out there, a galaxy full of aliens had decided that humans did not matter anymore, that their ships were relics, that their time had passed. Danny smiled. They were about to find out how wrong they were. Marsh arrived the next morning with a shuttle full of tools and a look on her face that said she thought Danny had lost his mind. She was a small woman with dark hair that she kept tied back and hands that were always covered in grease. She had been fixing ships since she was 16 years old, and there was no engine in the galaxy she could not make run again. But when she stepped onto the Vagrant Dawn for the first time, she stopped walking and just stood there in the corridor, looking around with wide eyes. "Danny," she said slowly, "do you have any idea what you bought?" "A ship that nobody wanted." "No, you bought a piece of history." She ran her hand along the wall, feeling the thickness of the metal. "They do not build ships like this anymore. Look at these bulkheads. They are 3 times thicker than modern designs, and these conduits." She opened a panel and stared at the wiring inside. "There are backup systems for the backup systems." Human engineers were paranoid, Danny. They built this ship to survive anything. They spent the first week just exploring. The Vagrant Dawn was bigger than either of them had realized. There were crew quarters for over 200 people, a medical bay with equipment that still worked, cargo holds large enough to store supplies for years, and engineering sections that seemed to go on forever. Every door they opened revealed something new. But the ship was also broken. Power cells had drained over 30 years of neglect. Conduits had corroded. Computer systems had crashed and never been restarted. The engines were cold and dark, their fuel lines clogged with residue that had hardened into something like stone. Made a list of everything they needed. It was a very long list. "This is going to take months," she said, "and a lot of money." "I have some money left," Danny said, "and I have time." They put out word that they were looking for crew. Not many people answered. Humans were not popular in this sector, and working on an old warship sounded like a good way to get yourself killed. But a few people showed up anyway. Ben Torres was the first. He was a pilot, one of the best in the sector, but he had lost his license after getting into a fight at a bar on Nexus Station. The fight had been over a merchant insulting humanity, calling them animals who should have been wiped out in the war. Ben had broken the merchant's jaw. The authorities had grounded him for 5 years. "I heard you have a ship that needs flying," Ben said when he arrived. "I am your man." Amy came next. She was young, barely 25, fresh out of the engineering academy on Earth. She had graduated at the top of her class, but no alien company would hire her. They said humans were not reliable. They said humans were too emotional. They said a lot of things that really meant they did not trust her species. "I did not spend 6 years studying ship systems to sit on a station doing nothing," Amy said. "Give me a chance. I will prove myself." The last to join was Pete. He was older than the others, with gray hair and a face full of wrinkles from years of hard living. He had served on human warships during the war, back when humanity still had a fleet that mattered. He had been an officer on a destroyer that fought in the Battle of Orion, one of the last great engagements before the treaty. "I thought I would die on a ship like this," Pete said when he first walked onto the bridge. "When they decommissioned the fleet, they took something from us. They took our pride, our purpose." He looked at Danny with eyes that held 30 years of regret. Maybe it is time to take some of that back. For 6 months they worked, rebuilt the power systems piece by piece, replacing dead cells and cleaning corroded lines. Amy rewrote the navigation software, updating old code to work with modern star charts. Ben ran simulations in the pilot's chair, learning how the ship handled, memorizing every response and quirk. Pete supervised everything, his experience guiding them through problems they would never have solved on their own. And slowly, the vagrant dawn began to wake up. The first sign came when they restored power to the main reactor. The engine room hummed with energy for the first time in decades. Lights flickered on throughout the ship, replacing the dim emergency glow with something brighter. Displays that had been dark for 30 years suddenly showed data, scrolling numbers and system reports that nobody had read since before Danny was born. "We have power," announced from engineering. "She is alive." But that was not all. Danny was sitting on the bridge when he heard it. A voice, crackling through the speakers, rough and distorted from years of disuse. "Crew detected, analyzing." Everyone froze. Main systems coming online, running diagnostics. There was a pause that seemed to last forever. Diagnostics complete. Hull integrity at 82%. Engine capacity at 67%. Weapons systems offline per Treaty of Orion restrictions. Another pause. It has been 31 years, 7 months, and 12 days since last active deployment. Danny stood up slowly. "Who are you?" "I am the combat artificial intelligence installed in this vessel. I was designed to assist the crew in all operational matters, with a focus on tactical situations and threat assessment. My designation is VAD7, but previous crews called me Dawn." Amy looked at Danny with shock on her face. "The AI is still active. It has been running in hibernation mode this whole time, using minimal power from the emergency reserves." "Dawn," Danny said carefully, "do you know what happened? Do you know why you were shut down?" "I have records of the Treaty of Orion. I know that humanity was required to decommission its military fleet as a condition of peace. I know that I was placed in storage and forgotten." The AI's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded almost like sadness. I waited. I hoped that someone would return, that I would be needed again. Pete stepped forward. He had tears in his eyes. "We need you, Dawn, we all do." "Then I am ready to serve. What are your orders, Captain?" Danny looked at his crew, was grinning. Ben was already running his hands over the flight controls. Amy was pulling up system reports, her eyes bright with excitement. Pete stood at attention, like a soldier remembering old habits. "Our orders," Danny said, "are to fly, to take jobs that nobody else will take, to show the galaxy that humanity is not finished yet." "Understood, Captain. I recommend we begin with a full systems check, followed by engine tests. If the crew is agreeable, we could be ready for our first mission within 2 weeks." Danny sat down in the captain's chair. It still fit him perfectly. "Let us get to work." The Vagrant Dawn powered up her engines for the first time in 30 years. The sound filled the ship like a heartbeat, strong and steady. Outside, the stars waited. And somewhere in her electronic heart, Dawn felt something she had not felt in decades. Purpose. The first real job came 3 weeks after they finished repairs. A convoy of merchant ships needed protection while traveling through a dangerous region called the Drift. The Drift was a place where asteroids floated in thick clouds, where sensors had trouble seeing far, and where pirate clans had been attacking cargo ships for years. The merchants were the same insect-like species that had sat in the auction house and refused to bid on the Vagrant Dawn. Their convoy leader was named, and when he met Danny at Nexus Station to discuss the contract, his antennae twitched with obvious doubt. A human ship clicked through his translator device. "We did not know any were still flying." "Mine is," Danny said simply. "These vessels have a reputation. They are unpredictable, aggressive. Our people have stories about what human ships did during the war." "I know the stories. Do you want protection or not?" His compound eyes studied Danny for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a sigh. "No one else would take this route. The pirates have become too bold. 3 convoys were destroyed last month. The Galactic Coalition says they cannot spare ships to patrol this sector." He clicked his mandibles. "We will pay you double the standard rate, but if you fail us, human, there will be no second contract." Danny shook his hand, which seemed to confuse the greatly. "We will not fail." The convoy consisted of 6 cargo ships, each one carrying food supplies for a colony on the far side of the Drift. The ships were slow and had almost no weapons. They were easy targets, and everyone knew it. The Vagrant Dawn took position at the front of the convoy, her sensors scanning the asteroid fields around them. Dawn's voice filled the bridge with constant updates. "Detecting multiple asteroid clusters ahead. Visibility will be reduced. Recommend defensive formation." "Do it," Danny ordered. Ben guided the ship smoothly into position, his hands steady on the controls. After weeks of practice, he had learned how the Vagrant Dawn moved. She was not like modern ships, which were built for efficiency and comfort. She was built for war. Her responses were quick and sharp. Her engines had more power than any civilian vessel. When Ben pushed her, she pushed back. "I have not flown anything like this in years," Ben said with a grin. "She wants to fight." They traveled through the Drift for 3 days without incident. The merchants stayed close, their ships huddled together like frightened animals. Danny started to wonder if the pirates had heard about the escort and decided to stay away. On the 4th day, Dawn spoke with a new tone in her voice, calm but urgent. "Captain, I am detecting multiple contacts emerging from the asteroid field. 12 vessels. Configuration suggests raider design. They are moving to intercept." Danny stood up from his chair. "All hands to battle stations." The bridge came alive with activity, ran to engineering to monitor the power systems. Amy pulled up damage control protocols. Pete took position at the tactical station, his old instincts kicking in like he had never left the military. Ben cracked his knuckles and tightened his grip on the flight controls. On the 12 ships appeared from behind a massive asteroid. They were fast and heavily armed, covered in weapons that glowed with charged energy. The lead ship hailed them. "Human vessel, this is commander of the Red Claw clan." The voice was deep and rough, full of confidence. "We have no quarrel with your kind. Stand aside and let us take the cargo. You may leave unharmed." Danny looked at his crew. Nobody moved. Nobody suggested they run. "This is Captain Danny Cole of the Vagrant Dawn. These merchants are under my protection. You have 30 seconds to withdraw, or we will consider you hostile." The commander laughed. It was an ugly sound. "One ship against 12. Human arrogance has not changed. Very well, die with the insects if you wish." The raiders began their attack run, spreading out to surround the convoy from multiple angles. They moved with practiced coordination, clearly veterans of dozens of similar attacks. Against normal merchant escorts, this strategy was devastating. But the Vagrant Dawn was not a normal escort. "Dawn," Danny said quietly, "show them what we can do." "With pleasure, Captain. Engaging combat protocols." The ship moved. Ben barely had to touch the controls as Dawn's tactical systems took over, working with the pilot in perfect harmony. The Vagrant Dawn accelerated toward the lead raider at a speed that should have been impossible for a ship her size. The commander barely had time to register surprise before the first shots hit his vessel. Human weapons were different from alien designs. Most species built weapons that were precise and efficient, meant to disable targets with minimum energy expenditure. Humans built weapons that hit hard and kept hitting. The Vagrant Dawn's guns fired in rapid bursts, overwhelming the raider's shields in seconds and tearing through its hull. The lead ship exploded. "One down," Dawn announced, engaging secondary targets. The remaining 11 raiders scattered, their confidence shattered. They had expected easy prey, not a warship that fought like a creature possessed. The Vagrant Dawn chased them through the asteroid field, her sensors tracking multiple targets at once, her weapons firing with mechanical precision. 2 more ships went down in the first minute, then 3 more. The raiders tried to regroup, to coordinate their fire, but every time they formed a pattern, the Vagrant Dawn was already moving to counter it. She dodged through asteroid fields like she was dancing, her hull taking hits that would have crippled a modern vessel and barely slowing down. "Hull integrity at 94%, Dawn reported calmly. "Minor damage to forward sensors, compensating." Pete laughed out loud. "They built these ships to take a beating and keep fighting. They have never seen anything like this." After 4 minutes, 8 raider ships were either destroyed or disabled, their crews sending desperate surrender signals. The remaining 4 turned and fled, their engines burning at maximum as they disappeared into the asteroid field. The Vagrant Dawn did not chase them. There was no need. Danny's hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He had been in dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. Nothing that made him feel so alive. Dawn status report. "All enemy vessels neutralized or retreated. Convoy is intact. No casualties among the merchant ships." A pause. "Captain, I must say, it is good to fight again. I had forgotten what purpose felt like." The communication panel lit up with an incoming signal. It was, and his clicking voice was filled with something that sounded like awe. "Human vessel, what? What was that? We have never seen a ship move like that, fight like that. Our sensors could barely track you." Danny leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. That was the Vagrant Dawn. That was a human warship doing what she was built to do. "The stories were true," they said quietly. "All the stories about what human ships could do. We thought they were exaggerations. We thought—" He trailed off, clicking softly to himself. "You thought we were finished," Danny said. "You thought the treaty had broken us, made us small and weak." "Yes, we thought that." Danny smiled. It was not a kind smile. We are still here, and we are just getting started." The convoy continued through the drift without further incident. When they reached their destination, transferred triple the agreed payment to Danny's account and sent a message that simply said, "We were wrong about your kind. Call us if you need work. We will remember what you did." Word spread quickly. Within a week, every merchant guild in the sector was talking about the human ship that had destroyed a pirate fleet. Within a month, the Vagrant Dawn had more job offers than she could accept. The galaxy had started to remember why they once feared humanity. And Danny Cole was just getting started. 1 year passed since Danny Cole bought the Vagrant Dawn at auction. In that time, everything changed. The ship that nobody wanted had become the most famous vessel in 3 sectors. Merchants requested her by name. Colony governors sent personal messages asking for her protection. News feeds carried stories about the human cruiser that had appeared from nowhere and started cleaning up space lanes that the official patrols had abandoned. Danny hired more crew to handle the increasing workload. Lisa came aboard as communications officer, a quiet woman who had spent years working on alien trading stations and spoke 6 different languages fluently. Joined as the ship's medic, a former military doctor who had been forced into retirement when the Human Medical Corps was disbanded after the war. Santos was the addition, another veteran like Pete who had spent 30 years feeling useless and was grateful for a chance to serve again. The Vagrant Dawn became more than a ship. She became a symbol. Humans who had spent decades being told they were not good enough started telling different stories. They talked about the cruiser that had taken on 12 raiders and won. They talked about the captain who refused to abandon anyone. They talked about what it might mean if more human ships came back online, if more crews decided to stop hiding and start fighting. This kind of talk made certain people very nervous. Admiral was the commander of the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition, the organization created after the war to make sure humanity never became a threat again. He was, with a face made of living crystal that shifted colors based on his mood. When he summoned Danny to Nexus Station for a meeting, the crystals were dark red. "Captain Cole," said, sitting behind a desk made of polished metal that probably cost more than Danny's entire ship, "thank you for coming. I did not have much choice. Your message said my docking privileges would be revoked if I refused. A necessary measure. We have important matters to discuss." The Admiral's office was large and cold, decorated with medals and flags from a dozen different species. Danny noticed there were no human flags anywhere, no human symbols at all. "Your vessel," continued, "is in violation of 17 different provisions of the Treaty of Orion. The weapons systems were supposed to be permanently disabled. The combat AI was supposed to be erased. The ship itself was supposed to be destroyed, not sold at auction. I bought her legally. The salvage authority certified the sale. The salvage authority assumed no one would be foolish enough to try operating a human war cruiser. Those ships are monuments to your species' aggression. They should have been melted down, not paraded through civilized space." Danny felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "My ship has not broken any laws. We have protected merchants. We have stopped pirates. We have responded to distress calls in sectors your coalition patrols completely ignore. Maybe instead of threatening me, you should ask why people keep hearing us instead of relying on your peacekeepers." His crystal face shifted to a darker shade of red. "You do not understand the larger picture, Captain. The treaty exists because your species nearly destroyed this galaxy. Humans built weapons that other civilizations had never imagined. You fought wars not to survive, but to conquer. When the coalition finally stopped your expansion, we vowed to make sure it could never happen again. That was 30 years ago. I was a child when the war ended. My crew were children. We did not fight anyone. We did not threaten anyone. We just want to fly our ship and make an honest living. It is not about you personally. It is about what you represent. leaned forward, his eyes glittering like cut gems. One human warship is a curiosity, two would be a concern, a dozen would be a crisis. If your species starts recovering its old vessels, starts remembering what it was capable of, then what? The balance of power might shift. Humans might have a voice again. Humans might become a threat again. Danny stood up from his chair. He was tired of this conversation, tired of being treated like a criminal for flying a ship that had been thrown away and forgotten. Admiral, my ship has done more to secure the shipping lanes in 1 year than your coalition has done in 10. Your peacekeepers do not patrol the drift. They do not respond to distress calls from the outer colonies. They do not protect anyone who cannot pay their fees. The vagrant Dawn does all of those things, and we do them because it is right, not because someone is paying us. That is precisely what concerns me, said quietly. You are building a reputation. People are starting to trust you, to admire you. Do you know what happens when a species that was defeated starts to believe in itself again? They stop being defeated. The Admiral's face went very still. Consider this a warning, Captain Cole. The Coalition is watching you. If you step out of line, if you give us any excuse, we will act. And there will be no auction this time. Your ship will be destroyed and your crew will face charges for violating the treaty. Danny walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back to face the Admiral. You know what I think, Admiral? I think you are not really worried about the treaty. I think you are worried because you spent 30 years telling everyone that humans were finished, that we did not matter anymore, that we could be safely ignored. And now, a single ship crewed by misfits and veterans has done what your entire coalition could not do. We made people feel safe. He opened the door. That must be very embarrassing for you. Danny left before could respond. On the shuttle ride back to the Vagrant Dawn, he thought about everything the Admiral had said. The Coalition was afraid. That much was obvious, but fear could be dangerous. It could make powerful people do stupid things. He called a meeting when he got back to the ship. The entire crew gathered on the bridge, their faces serious as Danny explained what had happened. So they are going to shut us down, Ben asked, his hands clenching into fists. They want to, but they need an excuse. As long as we follow the rules, as long as we do not give them a reason to act, they cannot touch us. Frowned, what about the weapons, the AI? Those are technically treaty violations. The weapons were sealed by the salvage authority, not us. And the AI, Danny looked at the nearest speaker, where Dawn was listening silently. The AI was already active when we bought the ship. We did not wake her up. She woke herself up. That is technically correct, Dawn said. I maintained minimal power throughout my storage period. No external activation was required. Pete laughed, a rough sound from deep in his chest. They did not think to check if the ship was actually dead before they sold her. That is their mistake, not ours. For now, we continue as normal, Danny said. We take jobs, we protect people. We show the galaxy what humans can do when someone gives us a chance. And if the Coalition comes for us, he paused, looking at each member of his crew, we will deal with that when it happens. Lisa spoke up for the first time. Captain, there is something else you should know. Since the battle in the drift, I have been monitoring communications from other sectors. There are other humans out there who are talking about us. Some of them are asking questions about where to find old ships, how to restore them, how to form crews. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. How many? I do not know exactly, but it is more than a few. The Vagrant Dawn was not alone anymore. Somewhere out there, other humans were waking up too. They were looking at the stars and remembering that they once had a fleet that made galaxies tremble. Admiral was right to be afraid. The storm was gathering, and Danny Cole was standing right at the center of it. The distress call came from the outer reaches, a region of space so far from civilization that most species had stopped putting it on their maps. A colony ship carrying 3,000 settlers had been attacked by something unknown. Their engines were destroyed. Their life support was failing. They had maybe 2 days before everyone on board died. Danny was on the bridge when the message arrived. Lisa played it for the entire crew, and the fear in the captain's voice was impossible to miss. "This is Colony Vessel Hope of Tomorrow calling any ship within range. We are under attack. Our escorts have been destroyed. We do not know what hit us. It came from nowhere. It tore through our ships like they were made of paper. Please, if anyone can hear this, we have 3,000 civilians on board, families, children. We need help." The message repeated 3 times, then went silent. "Distance to their position?" Danny asked. 4 days at maximum speed," Dawn replied. "Captain, I should note that the Coalition has already declined to respond. They say the distance is too great and the risk too high." Of course they did. Danny looked around the bridge at his crew. They had been through a lot together in the past year. They had fought pirates. They had faced down Coalition threats. They had proven that one ship could make a difference. But this was different. This was a 4-day journey into unknown space to face something that had destroyed multiple ships without breaking a sweat. Ben was the first to speak. "I did not join this crew to run away from a fight." Amy nodded. "Those people need help. Real help, not Coalition paperwork and excuses." Pete stood at attention, his old military posture returning. "Captain, I have been waiting 30 years to do something that matters. This is it." His voice came through from engineering. "I heard the message. Just tell me how fast you need us to go, and I will make it happen." Danny felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the ship's heating systems. These were his people, his family. They would follow him anywhere, even into the unknown. Dawn set a course, maximum speed. "Understood, Captain. Course laid in. Engaging engines now." The vagrant Dawn pushed harder than she had ever pushed before, worked around the clock in engineering, keeping the reactors stable as they demanded more and more power from systems that were never designed for this kind of sustained output. Amy ran constant diagnostics, fixing problems before they became emergencies. Ben barely left the pilot's chair, guiding them through asteroid fields and gravity wells with skill that bordered on artistic. On the 3rd day, they started picking up debris on their sensors. Pieces of escort ships, torn apart and scattered across thousands of kilometers. Whatever had attacked the colony ship had not just destroyed its defenders. It had annihilated them. "Dawn," Danny said quietly, "what could do this kind of damage?" The AI was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried something that sounded almost like uncertainty. "Captain, I am detecting energy signatures in the debris that match historical records from before the war, before the Coalition, before any current civilization." "What records?" "Records of the harvesters." Everyone on the bridge went very still. Harvesters were the oldest threat in the galaxy. Automated weapons platforms built by a civilization that had died millions of years ago. They drifted through the void, destroying anything that generated a power signature. Most species believed they were extinct, wiped out in ancient wars that nobody remembered. "The Harvester is still here," Dawn continued. "It is circling back toward the colony ship. Based on its current trajectory, it will reach the survivors in approximately 18 hours. Danny stared at where a massive shape was visible against the distant stars. It was huge, at least 3 times the size of the vagrant Dawn. Its hull was covered in weapons that glowed with cold light. It moved through space with the patience of something that had all the time in the universe to kill. "Dawn, what are our odds?" Harvesters were designed to destroy conventional vessels. Their weapons are powerful, their armor is thick, their targeting systems are advanced beyond anything built in the last 1,000,000 years. A pause. "However, I am not a conventional vessel. I was built by humans. Your species designed me to face threats that other civilizations considered insurmountable. During the war, human ships engaged enemy fleets 10 times their size and survived. We were built to do the impossible." That is not exactly an answer. My recommendation is that we attack. We have surprise on our side. The Harvester will not expect resistance this far from inhabited space. If we strike hard and fast, if we use every advantage our design provides, we have a chance. Danny looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw something stronger: determination, trust, faith in each other and in the ship that had carried them this far. All hands to battle stations. We are going to save those people. The vagrant Dawn screamed toward the Harvester at attack speed. Ben pushed the engines beyond their rated limits and somehow kept them from exploding. Amy coordinated damage control teams. Pete manned the tactical station with decades of experience guiding his hands. Lisa sent one last message to the colony ship: "Help is coming. Hold on." The Harvester saw them coming and turned to face them. Ancient weapons powered up, filling space with deadly light. The battle that followed would become legend. The vagrant Dawn was smaller, weaker, less advanced in almost every way. But she was also faster, more agile, and crewed by people who refused to accept defeat. Ben flew like he was possessed, dodging attacks that should have torn the ship apart. Dawn coordinated every system with perfect precision, squeezing every bit of performance from engines and weapons that were pushed far beyond their design specifications. They took hit after hit. Hull breaches opened on 3 decks. The forward weapons array burned out from overuse. One engine pod failed completely, forcing Amy to reroute power through backups that were never meant to handle this kind of load. Ran from emergency to emergency, patching wounded crew members and sealing damaged compartments. But they kept fighting. Human ships were built different. Every system had a backup. Every backup had a backup. The engineers who designed the vagrant Dawn had been paranoid, obsessive, determined to create something that would survive anything. And now, 30 years after everyone had written her off as a relic, that obsessive engineering was the only thing keeping 3,000 innocent people alive. 2 hours into the battle, Dawn's voice came through the speakers, calm despite everything. "Captain, I have identified a weakness in the Harvester's armor. There is a gap near its central reactor. If we can land a concentrated strike at that location, we may be able to trigger a critical failure." "Can you make the shot?" "Not from this distance. We would need to get close, very close." Danny did not hesitate. "Ben, take us in." The vagrant Dawn dove straight at the Harvester, ignoring the weapon's fire that tore at her hull. Alarms screamed. Crew members shouted damage reports. The filled with the massive shape of the ancient weapon, growing larger and larger until it blocked out the stars. At the last possible moment, Dawn fired everything she had. The shots hit the weak point perfectly. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the Harvester's hull cracked open, revealing the reactor beneath. Light poured out, blinding and terrible. "All engines reverse," Danny shouted. Ben threw the ship backward as the Harvester exploded. The shockwave caught the vagrant Dawn and sent her tumbling through space, emergency systems fighting to restore control. When the spinning finally stopped, the showed nothing but debris where the ancient weapon had been. "Status report," Danny gasped. "Hull integrity at 43%, Dawn reported. "Multiple systems offline. Engine capacity at 30%. We are badly damaged, Captain, but we are alive, and the Harvester is destroyed." 3 days later, a coalition fleet arrived to find the vagrant Dawn limping toward the nearest repair station with the colony ship safely in tow. 3,000 settlers were alive because one battered human cruiser had done what the entire galactic peacekeeping force had refused to do. Admiral came aboard personally. When he saw the damage, the burn marks on the walls, the exhausted crew barely standing at their stations, something changed in his crystalline face. "Captain Cole," he said slowly, "what you did here, my government may never acknowledge it publicly. The political complications would be too great, but I will acknowledge it. You reminded us why we feared your species during the war, your ships, your determination, your absolute refusal to accept defeat. He paused. Perhaps we should have respected you instead of trying to bury you. Danny was too tired to be angry. He just looked at the Admiral and spoke the truth. We are not asking for respect, Admiral. We are just doing what humans do. We survive, and we do not leave anyone behind. Nodded slowly. I am beginning to understand that. The Coalition fleet escorted the vagrant Dawn to the nearest station. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across the galaxy. A human ship, an ancient harvester, 3,000 lives saved. And somewhere in the depths of space, other humans heard the story and felt something stir in their hearts. Pride, hope, the memory of what they used to be and the possibility of what they could become again. Danny Cole sat in the captain's chair of his battered ship, surrounded by his crew, his family. They had been held together by determination and duct tape, by stubbornness and faith. They were bruised and broken and absolutely victorious. Dawn, he said quietly, how are you feeling? I am damaged but functional, Captain. Repairs will take time, but I am. The AI paused, searching for the right word. I am proud of this ship, of this crew, of what we accomplished together. So am I. Outside, the stars drifted past in the endless darkness. The galaxy was full of beings who had spent 30 years believing humanity was finished, that their time had passed, that they could be safely forgotten. They were wrong. The vagrant Dawn was proof of that. A ship that nobody wanted, a crew of misfits and outcasts, the best 5,000 credits Danny Cole had ever spent. And this was only the beginning.